My name is Reverend Jia Starr Brown, and I'm one of the pastors at First Covenant Church in Minneapolis. I'm honored to be with you today for Show Up MLK Monday, thinking about ways that we as people can show up. As a follower of Jesus and his ministry, I believe in my heart that everything and every person that God created is good and holy. The world around us disputes this, though, teaching harmful rhetoric that some of God's masterpieces are not equal to others. They're not as good as others, not as holy as others. These are all lies. Jesus' teaching disputes the world's messages of hate and exclusion. And anything we do to oppose these norms of injustice, well, it's countercultural. When we stand against oppression and exclusion, we are literally swimming upstream. We're walking uphill. We're going against the grain. And this is why showing up is so important, because it's time for change. It's time for uphill, upstream, going against the grain change. When I think about showing up, I consider it in 3 stages: physical, emotional, and in gospel fashion. When we show up physically, we place our bodies in physical or virtual spaces to learn and unlearn, to listen, contribute, and bridge in the forming of connections and relationships. I think of the power of immersion schools and curriculum, where students literally immerse themselves in the language and the culture of others to learn and to listen and to form authentic relationship and bonds. We can't understand each other if we don't connect with each other. We just end up being in close proximity to each other. Another way to show up, in addition to physically showing up, is emotionally. We've all been in spaces where we have been physically present, but sometimes emotionally absent. Showing up emotionally for another or for others involves not solely a commitment to enter these shared physical spaces, but also to emotionally invest as well. When we don't show up and invest emotionally, we miss important words and sentiments. We overlook cues. We bypass opportunities for learning and growing and understanding together. Showing up emotionally means hearing hard things, wrestling with challenging ideas, and investing our full selves into that connection. So when I think of showing up, I consider not only the physical implications or the emotional investments, but I also lean into the spiritual, the gospel piece as well. Placing ourselves physically into spaces may allow us to hear and experience conversations that we otherwise wouldn't have had, and cultural distinctions that we otherwise may not have previously recognized. And emotionally investing or showing up may create opportunities to listen and connect with our full selves. But it's only after we have invested physically and emotionally can the Spirit work in gospel fashion. When we are present and available and listening to what God is saying and doing in the midst of these spaces and interactions, we are fully showing up. Showing up in gospel fashion involves advocating for those whose voices are not listened to. It means embodying the gospel in Jesus' ministry by calling out the injustice that we can now see with these physical and emotional eyes. Showing up in gospel fashion involves saying what needs to be said, and not solely just what people want to hear. It brings us out of our comfort zones and brings us into spaces where, when we step out in faith, we can trust that God will fill the gaps of our shortcomings, because we all have them, and our blind spots, because we all have those too. Showing up in gospel fashion means allowing the Spirit to use us to support change, to bring change, and to be the change that we all need to see in the world. So you're here. You showed up. I'm so glad that you are with us in this physical, virtual space. What does it look like for you to show up emotionally, invested in this here and not yet time and space of awareness and activism and liberation? I'm hoping with you and praying with you, and I'm committed to showing up fully with you, physically, emotionally, and in gospel fashion. Who's with me?